course, became pretty good friends during that tournament, as most of the players did, while they were hanging out and battling for $20,000.
And the winner here should be in a position to draw into the top 8 while the loser has some work to do. Rudy Briscoe was X-1 going into the previous round. He'd lost. If he'd won that round, probably in a position to draw in. So I don't know if we have any players locked for the top 8 as of right now.
It's the 0-4, the Trailblazer, to start things off here for Mize. And Lossett with a Battle-Wise Hoplite. I imagine we will have time for a backup match. I don't think this one's going to take too long.
Certainly not game 1, where there's essentially no interaction. Post-board, some cards people can bring in to try to block maybe or kill things, but game 1 is a free-for-all.
Battle-Wise Hoplite here for Logan as well. We'll see if Joe can build up his Battle-Wise Hoplite and get things started off. There's a Laguna Band Trailblazer, something that is on Mize's side of the table.
Zero copies,
play an ordeal.
0 copies in Joe's main deck of the Trailblazer. Logan and Steven Mann playing with 2 copies in the main.
Joe, of course, going to trigger the Scry and the Heroic there on Battle-Wise Hoplite now that it has been targeted. It's a 3-3. Let's make it a 4-4 as it works its way into the red zone. Tough one to block now. And what's interesting about this matchup, too, is, I'm not entirely sure when you're supposed to be chump blocking here, because eventually God's Willing and Feat of Resistance will make it so that you don't have the option at all. Perhaps a card like Stratus Walk. So are you supposed to chump block early and often? I think that's tough to say.
Yeah, there's elements of this matchup that are very interesting, like you mentioned, where often chump blocking on turn 2 is considered just to be a bad play, something that only the newest of players do. But in this matchup where blocking becomes a challenge later on the game because of Aqueous Form, Stratus Walk, God's Willing, Feat of Resistance, sometimes you kind of have to pick your spots and chump block early. And Logan saying, well, this Trailblazer is probably not going to do very much over the course of this game except chump block. Might as well get in while getting's good.
Yeah, he took the opportunity to chump block there, so Mize is still going to stay at 19, and now he's going to try to build a big monster. You can see his hand, 2 copies of God's Willing, a Plains over there, another copy of Battle-Wise Hoplite, and what looks to be an Aqueous Form. He'll just send in for 2 at this point. He'll take the lead as far as life is concerned. Looks like he's going to try to take the lead on the board as well here with a second copy of Battle-Wise Hoplite, a Plains to cast his God's Willing, and just a passing of the turn. Lossett will draw. Looks like a copy of Triton Tactics is what he has picked up. Mize has 1 copy of Triton Tactics in his main deck, as does Lossett, so that could be a fun little side game.
Oh, absolutely. In part because both of these players are going to be kind of 2 ships passing the night, especially now with Joe playing in Aqueous Form. And that's the kind of card where, it could catch Logan by surprise and give Joe an opportunity to block in a spot where Logan isn't anticipating it.
Trigger Heroic will Lossett. Little Scry action there. Now it's time to come into the red zone. He will stack his 2 effects, 1 from Ordeal of Thoughts and 1 from Aqueous Form, so he'll start by scrying first. Hero of Iros is the card that he's looking at. And this card is going to stay on top of the deck, and now Ordeal of Thoughts will trigger, so a +1/+1 counter, and now 2 cards coming here for Lossett.
And I really like Joe taking the Hero of Iros here just because he wants another 2-drop. Here he can play a land and then have 2 creatures to target with Triton Tactics.
And there is your land. This is your hero. And a passing of the turn. God's Willing is going to target Battle-Wise Hoplite as Logan's looking to make this a little bit bigger. Also, set up his draw for the next turn as well.
And also in this matchup, mana's just at a premium. I mean, Logan needs to scry, needs to find some help, and he doesn't have mana to waste because he is looking at death in 2 turns.
See Logan's hand, God's Willing in Aqueous Form. He's happy enough with what is on top of his deck, and he will be drawing this card. He has found a copy of Ordeal of Thassa. Not a bad find.
But I have a feeling this Triton Tactics from Joe is going to be bad news.
What's interesting about this is you wonder if Joe knows about it in Logan's deck and if Logan knows about it in Joe's deck. Do either one of these players know that the other has Triton Tactics in their main deck, or at least access to it at some point in the matchup?
Part of the problem here is Logan's just going to die in 2 turns, so he can't play around anything. Even if he's aware that Joe's playing it, even if he thinks Joe has 4 copies in his deck, he's facing down death that he can't block in Aqueous Form. So he's got to throw caution to the wind, just push as much as he possibly can and hope for the best.
Well, a little scry action here on Battle-Wise Hoplite, of course. The heroic trigger did occur thanks to Ordeal of Thassa. Now it's time to get into the red zone. See if both creatures have any interest in attacking here. Logan is in such a difficult spot, he might have to try to get lucky, and that's where Triton Tactics is the real blowout, too.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. He just cannot play around things at this stage.
2 cards coming for Logan off of the Ordeal. And Joe is going to play Triton Tactics, so he will reveal his big card. Logan's probably thinking to himself, well, I've actually done that to a couple people this weekend, so yeah, I know what this feels like.
Logan knows this is bad news, but again, what's he going to do?
And all the text in this card is extremely relevant. You get to untap your creatures and block. You get to trigger Heroic since it's 2 target creatures. Your creatures get +0/+3, so he's not going to be able to kill them in combat. And then they don't get to untap. A little Frost Breath action there. It's all bad news.
So all your guys are going to die. My blocks are completely safe. And even if they survive somehow, they don't untap next turn when you're dead in 2 turns. So not a bad spot for this card.
It was a limited all-star in its format, and it can certainly shine in these kind of matchups. Joe going to take the opportunity to block here.
I thought it was a teensy bit overrated and limited for the record.
Yeah, some people felt like it was very, very good. Some people thought it was a little overrated. It depended on who you talk to about it.
I was in the overrated camp. I never had them because I never valued them as highly as the other people at my table.
But it could certainly be a blowout in limited or apparently in constructed.
Oh, it has its moments.
Yeah.
It absolutely does.
Logan has to try to figure out what he can do here. He knows he's in some trouble. He's going to have to use God's Willing. So there's God's Willing on the big Battle-Wise Hoplite. Trigger Heroic, of course. Top card's going to become the bottom card. Gonna get the Scry again due to God's Willing actually resolving. That'll go to the bottom as well. That Battle-Wise Hoplite's going to bite the dust. And Joe says, I do have a Helios Pilgrim to search for some other toys. And Logan says, that's good enough for me. So Joe Lossett's going to win game number 1 here over Logan Mize in the white-blue Heroic Mirror. Number 6 on our Open Series leaderboard here for Season 1. Picks up game number 1 over number 9. As we turn our attention to the sideboard, we will start with Mize. And these sideboards are probably going to look a little alike, but Logan does have 2 copies of Bermaz, 2 Treasure Cruise, 3 Glare of Heresy, a Triton Tactics to go along with the first one in his main deck, an Ordeal of Heliod, 2 Erase, 3 Stubborn Denial, and a copy of Mortal's Ardor, which we saw from him in the last match. I expect to see Glare of Heresy at the very least.
Glare of Heresy is great in this matchup. Again, it's just all about trying to actually answer the problematic creatures before they get out of control. Game 1, neither deck can do that, but post-board access to Glare of Heresy helps out a lot there. I like the life gain effects in this matchup a lot because accepting that you're not going to be able to kill that many things, one of the ways to manage the damage race is just gain a chunk of life. So the Mortal's Ardor and the copy of Ordeal of Heliod help there a lot. And the Triton Tactics, I think this is a great matchup for.
Well, what do we see on Joe's side of things?
A Spectre Ward, and Ajani's Presence, a Laguna Band Trailblazer, an Ordeal of Heliod, a Mortal Obstinacy, an Erase, 2 copies of Treasure Cruise, 3 Stubborn Denials, 4 Glare of Heresy. I like the 4 copies of Glare of Heresy. I think, if Joe had access to 7 or 8, he would bring all of them in here just to be able to interact a little bit more. Another Ordeal of Heliod for the same reason that Logan wants it, and I think the Mortal Obstinacy is a fine one-up to either draw or search for.
Well, Season 1 is certainly underway here for 2015, and we've got more dates ahead of it. I've already talked to some people in attendance this weekend, already looking to make the drive from here to Philadelphia, which is no short drive, but we'll be there next weekend. I'm looking forward to that show.
And we got a Legacy Open next week in Philadelphia. We take 1 week off for the Fate Reforged pre-release. Then in DC for Standard, week 1 of that Standard format. Legacy in Indianapolis the following weekend. Off for a week for the regionals. Make sure to go to StarCityGames.com/regionals, get more information on that tournament. Houston for the first time in Open Series history for a Standard Open. LA the following weekend. Our first Modern Open Series in Baltimore, February 28th through March 1st. Standard Grand Prix in Miami the following weekend. Make sure to stay tuned to MagicGB.com for more information as we get closer to the event. A Standard Open in Dallas the following weekend, and then March 27th through 29th, the Season 1 Invitational in Richmond, Virginia. Standard Open Series with the Standard and Legacy Invitational. Me, you, and Matthias Hunt in the booth.
First Invitational of the year will be in Richmond. Charlotte last year, we moved to Richmond this year. Love the Richmond location. We had a great Grand Prix there last year. One of the largest Grand Prix of all time, and we're expecting a fantastic turnout for our Season 1 Invitational, where we will crown a champion, punch some invites to the Players' Championship. Someone's going to win $10,000 in their likeness on a card, too, so not a bad weekend to be a Magic player.
I have not been to Richmond in an extremely long time. Of all the cities that we frequently hit on the Open Series, it's one that I've randomly never covered an event for. I wasn't in the booth for the Grand Prix, and I have not been there since the Grand Prix there in the mid-2000s.
Richmond Suite.
Yep.
I was at that Grand Prix, the mid-2000s, extended.
Yes, I was there as well.
Yeah. Who was the champion?
Don't know.
Come on, really? Mike Crum, dog. Dredge, man.
Okay.
That was Dredge's breakout party.
Oh, yeah.
How do you forget that?
I remember that tournament now. That was, I played Boros.
You didn't play Dredge.
Well, Boros Guild Mage is pretty good against them because if you gave your creatures first strike, then it made it harder for them to block with zombie infestation tokens.
Are you done?
That was the thing.
Are you done? I'm not going to listen to that.
Psychotog was pretty bad news.
Oh, was it? Psychotog with Wonder after they cast Tolarian Winds and Dredge with 3,000 cards? How was your Boros Guild Mage then?
I was still attacking.
Okay, all right.
Still giving things haste.
I'm at 12 then.
Still keeping it real, you know? It's not a great choice for that tournament.
That is one of my favorite tournaments of all time. Because just the stories of people when they played against Dredge and they did not know what was happening. Like, oh, I'm dead, aren't I? Oh, yes. Oh, you're very dead.
You know, we could have kept that deck completely under wraps, but Osip Levodovich played it in a random trial 2 weeks before, came in second place, and the whole thing leaked.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I hope he really liked his, half a box or whatever he got. We could have had 8 of the top 8. It would have just been 8 of us. Just played it in a trial, you
got to get some testing in.
Yeah, I guess so.
Got to get those games in, man. Yeah, Dredge and I just have a storied history as a mechanic. I remember vintage superstar Rich Shea. He was testing for Pro Tour Los Angeles, and that was right when Ravnica came out, and he's just like, I'm fairly sure that Golgari Grave Troll is broken. And I remember saying very vividly, I'm fairly sure you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And he had he basically had built the deck that Billy Moreno got second place with. Mm-hmm. He had Psychotog and all these Dredge effects, and he's just like, this is just completely unfair. It's just like, my hand is my graveyard, and they can't do anything, and Psychotog's huge. I'm like, dude, let's just start working on Blue-Green Madness. Just, why don't you put that away, and let's work on putting Drooling Ogre in our red deck.
Yeah, because Target had so many people, we worked tangentially with a lot of teams. So we had Antonio De Rosa, who worked with the Italians, and they were working on Goblins with Aether Vial before anyone else had that deck. And I walked over to some playtesting game, they had a Vial in play, and I'm like, what are you going to do, put it up to 5 and put a Siege Gang into play? Yeah. And then, obviously they did, because that's really powerful.
Yeah.
That's where I learned, don't dismiss ideas out of hand, give them a fair shake, don't be arrogant. Valuable lessons to learn. If only I'd picked it up a little bit earlier in my career.
When Rich got back from the Pro Tour, I apologized profusely for my arrogance and stupidity.
Yep.
And he has gone on to be one of the best vintage players of all time and a very innovative deck builder. So do not dismiss ideas.
And qualified for an upcoming Pro Tour through his finish at Grand Prix New Jersey, if I'm not mistaken.
The man can game. We don't see him a lot, because he does a lot as far as education is concerned. I think he's working on his third degree or whatever.
Oh no, I think maybe I'm thinking of Ely Cassis.
Ely is the one who qualified.
Excuse me.
I believe Rich was at the Grand Prix and had a solid finish, but we don't get to see him very much. And actually, when we did get to see him, I know we saw him in the Legacy Open, and he did really well with a Sultai strategy, Sultai Delver, even though we never get to see him on Open Series events. So, he can game, man. He can game.
There's a lot of people in the Eternal community who don't get to play very often, and certainly don't qualify for Pro Tours because they're not spending their time playing PTQs. But there are some sharp players out there that a lot of players have probably never heard of.
Big Rich Shea fan. Underway here in game number 2. It's a Temple of Light, man. Scry to the bottom, Will Mize. We'll head back Lossett's way. A Plains and just a pass. Mize will draw. Who will have the first heroic creature is the question. And will Mize play it on turn number 2, actually? It's interesting, too. He's going to play Battle White's Hot Plate. The only reason I say that, of course, is because a card like Glare of Heresy does exist after sideboard.
Yeah, you want to be a little bit more careful, but there's still such a premium on speed. I think you have to make some risks here.
Somebody doesn't have a second land. Well, Joe kept a bit of a sketcher.
Well, Joe had already mulliganed.
Sure.
So,
and he had 2 Defiant Strikes to cycle with. So perhaps the keep is reasonable, but it certainly did not work out, as Logan will be able to run away with this game pretty quickly, and it does not take Heroic a long time to run away with the game.
I mean, Logan still needs to be a little mindful here, just because, again, Glare of Heresy is a threat. So if he has no way to protect this creature, he has to be cautious. But it does appear as though he has God's willing, so I think he's going to be able to leverage this advantage pretty easily.
Here's an attack for 2 to start. And a Hero of Iroas, along with God's Willing and Triton Tactics at the ready. Joe will draw a card. There's a land. Manic Influence. Might be too late now, though.
Yeah, he's way behind, and the best thing he can try to do is play his own creature, which is going to push him behind in the damage race, or use a removal spell, which God's Willing is going to trump.
There's Hero. Joe will have to take 1 to cast it. It is kind of insane to say that Joe is super far behind for missing 1 land drop when he's playing a creature on this turn, but it doesn't take long in the matchup to get behind.
That's how this works. The creatures grow so large and they become unblockable that falling behind a little bit is more pronounced here, more dramatic than it is in most matchups.
Aqua's form will target Battle-Wise Hoplite. Little scry action here. Thanks to Battle-Wise's Heroic Trigger, top card becomes the bottom one. The also nice thing here is that these auras are a little bit cheaper, so our Deal with Us will only cost 1 mana, thanks to Hero of Iroas. Logan Mize getting to work, chaining off, coming into the red zone, gets to draw a couple of cards. Also gets to scry now, thanks to Aqua's form. So top card gonna stay on top here for Logan. It's a bit of a runaway here.
And assuming that Joe is doomed here, which it's not looking good,
yes.
Put it that way. What's meaningful to me so far is that both Logan game 1 and Joe game 2, they're going to die with cards in their hand, which means that both players need to be mulliganing very aggressively because
Sure.
It's not a card advantage fight. It's just what's happening on the board. Can you interact quickly? And in that sort of game, you cannot be messing around with hands that need help. You need a mulligan because if you die, it's probably going to be with spells left over in any case.
Hey, this is a matchup where you can actually win a game on a mulligan of 5.
Yes.
That's something that's actually doable because it's not about card density. There's a Clear Heresy. That's not going to work out, and Joe says that is good enough for me. And Logan Mize is going to win game number 2 here against Joe Lossett. White and blue heroic headed to a 3rd game. Lossett will be on the play, which is mighty important.
Big deal, and that's also why I like Joe's keep there. Even though it was super risky and he just got blown out, if Joe's hand had a path to have an explosive draw, I'm happy saying I'm going to lose this game a percentage of the time by not having land number 2, because if I draw the second land, I have a great shot of winning, probably way more so than if I mulligan to 5.
Yeah, it looks bad on the surface, right? And I even called it a sketcher when it happened. But given the matchup and, the relevance of cards and the fact that players are going to end the game with cards in their hands, you can keep kind of a hand like that, and if things do work out, he might be able to just win that game pretty easily.
Exactly, assuming that it had a path. And it looked like his hand was fairly powerful. He had Hero on turn with 2 mana and then a variety of spells in hand. So I think that if he draws land number 2 there, it's a really solid hand and worth the risk, because your hands of a couple lands and a couple spells with no real path and no real explosion, they're going to get gobbled up by anything. You need to keep the hands that are risky if they have a path to succeed, assuming you draw the right cards in the first couple of turns.
Well, we're going to take a look at our Season 2 schedule here for 2015. A much shorter season than Season number 1, unfortunately, but the dates are going to be pretty sweet. We're going to be doing a lot of standard action to kick things off.
Yeah, Syracuse, Providence, Seattle, and Cleveland, these will all be standard. We move on to the next page here with Dallas, another standard open series, Legacy in Worcester, Massachusetts, and then a modern open series and a modern standard invitational in Columbus. We'll be back here for the Origins Game Fair, June 5th through 7th.
This season just has my hands all over it.
Oh, Seattle and Cleveland?
And the invitational in Columbus. Let's just call it what it is.
Well, Season 1's pretty good to me. There's an open in Philadelphia, which is pretty close to New Jersey, and no open the following weekend, so I get to stay there. And then Los Angeles, which is not quite as close as San Diego, but still very drivable.
Hey, you drive there, 90 minutes or whatever?
Depends on traffic. With absolutely no traffic door to door to downtown LA, it's about an hour and 15 minutes.
Okay.
With normal traffic, it's an hour and 30. With rush hour traffic, it's 3.5 days.
Perfect.
So there's a lot of variance.
I have been in Los Angeles rush hour traffic before. I would not wish that upon anyone.
Oh, we went to that Dodgers game, and I thought I was just going to jump out of the window and just walk to the game.
Yeah, it's so bad.
It was so bad.
And the highways are like 5 lanes, too. They're big highways. And there's still infinite traffic. Is there a carpool lane?
Yes.
Doesn't matter?
It does matter. It definitely makes a huge difference.
Okay.
A lot of LA traffic is commuter traffic from work, so people are driving by themselves, but if you are in the carpool lane, it's a huge difference.
Okay, so you win if you're in the carpool lane.
Absolutely.
Now, do you cheat and get in the carpool lane when you're not supposed to?
There are some carpool lanes where if you buy the pass, you can be in it by yourself, which I have.
Oh, wow.
But no, I would not cheat it.
Oh, wow.
Because if you start cheating things like that, the rules of civilization break down. Then everyone starts doing it, and you don't have a carpool lane anymore.
There's a greater message here at work.
Right.
I see. What if that carpool lane was just a normal lane? Wouldn't that make things easier on the highway if it was just a normal lane?
No, because they also want to encourage people to drive together, both to alleviate traffic and to help with pollution. So you need to place those incentives so people do the behavior.
What if there was just one normal lane and then the rest were carpool lanes? Is that bad?
Most likely because the vast majority of drivers are driving by themselves. So you have one lane that does not move and a variety of empty lanes. That's a recipe for a riot, basically.
Well, that teaches them to get some friends and go to work together to save the environment. That's what I think.
Not everyone gets to have friends.
Oh, that's kind of sad. It's doom and gloom here on the Open Series.
No, that's not true. It's sad. It's mean to act like that's not the case.
I suppose that's true. Honesty is the best policy. This is angry political Patrick.
It's not political, it's social.
APP Patrick. Gotcha. A lot of different Patricks out there.
It's mean to people who don't have friends to say everyone gets to have a friend. That's mean.
A flooded strand is land number 2 here for Joe.
This is demonstrably not true.
I can tell you are very passionate about this issue. See if it'll be an island or a plains.
That's one of the challenges with this deck. I mean, in most matchups, what you're doing with your fetch lands don't really matter, but the white-blue heroic deck kind of has some features of legacy decks where it's very sensitive for a lot of blue mana and a lot of white mana. So fetching is a lot more complicated here than it is for any other deck in Standard.
It's the hero. Might be the best hero creature in the matchup. It seems like it's close between that and Battle White's Hoplite, just because Battle White's Hoplite lets you fix your draw so well.
Yeah, mana efficiency's at a premium in this matchup big time. So I like hero as the best threat. It's possible Seeker of the Way is really the thing that you want, because it doesn't matter the size so much as are you navigating the damage race the right way, and Seeker might do that better than any of the other cards.
And we haven't even seen that show up in either game for either player, so.
Well, Joe, both players are on 2 copies.
Yeah. Hero here from Mize, so he's out of the gate with the creatures first, but Joe gets to use Hero of Iroas before Logan does, as far as reducing the cost of auras. So see what kind of turn Lossett can put together in what is basically a match playing for top 8 right now.
Yeah, this is the winner should be locked here.
Yeah. There's a plains. And here's an Aqueous form. So hero gets a little bit bigger. And now an Ordeal of Heliod. That means the elevator is going to be going up on Joe's life total here. He's also going to get the Scry.
And now this means that Logan basically needs to have a commiserate response or a way to get the hero off the table, and it's not clear he'll be able to do either of those things.
But what's important here for Logan is that he gets to have a hero turn of his own to catch back up. Now, Joe going up to 28 is certainly a big deal, but Logan does get to have a nice turn of his own here, assuming that he has the mana and the requirements. You see at least one copy of Stratus Walk in his hand.
But this is one of the matchups where I feel like Ordeal of Heliod is actually the one that you want. Ordeal of Thassa has its moments too, but, you know, Joe's trying to constrict this game down to, 3 turns tops, and in that sort of scenario, getting 10 lights is a lot more powerful than drawing 2 cards.
Logan wondering how many cards Joe has in his hand. The answer is 3. Logan will start just by attacking here for 3. That's going to go down to 25. And now Mize with a copy of Seeker of the Way. So perhaps setting up for a big turn with the Seeker. We'll find out.
This is a path to gain some life. I mean, Ordeal of Heliod is probably the easiest one, but Seeker of the Way does have the potential to do much of the same thing.
We're going to head back Lossett's way here in just a moment, it seems. Lossett does have a Defiant Strike that he can play. He's deciding if now is the time to cycle, and it looks like now is. Of course, it also makes the hero a little bit bigger, so Joe will draw a card, untap those 3 lands along with the hero, and take a draw step.
I think it's really important for Joe to cycle there because in the event that he's really looking for Glare of Heresy. It feels like the game's probably a lock if he's able to find it. And if not, Logan has an opportunity to race back.
Here's Glare of Heresy. Gets Seeker off the table. And that might be the backbreaker right there, because Seeker was the way that I think Logan was going to try to work his way back into the game. He's having a little bit of mana issues, but being able to gain that life may have been good enough to keep him in the game, but that's off the table now.
Especially with Hero of Iros. I mean, it's possible, you know, if he draws a land, he can put together quite a few spells in one turn. Now he's down to 7 if he taps his Mana Confluence. He's looking at lethal. Joe has a God's Willing to protect his creatures. And again, the player who loses, most likely, this being Logan, is going to die with 5 or 6 spells in their hand.
Just unable to empty them out. But more importantly, and we mentioned this right at the top, the player who wins the die roll seems to be heavily favored in this matchup, because it is just 2 ships passing the night. It's not a combo mirror like it is in Legacy, but it certainly feels that way.
Yes.
Where there's really no interaction between the 2 players. Here's Stratus Walk. It's going to make favorite hoplite a little bigger, allow Mize to draw a card. It's another copy of Stratus Walk that he's found. A card that I think does play actually a pretty important role in this matchup as far as just getting him deeper into his deck, and flying certainly plays a role here, but not having a big enough impact in this game. All Mize can do is pass the turn back. Joe going to draw a card. And the Defiant Strike was probably unnecessary, but that'll likely lock it up as here comes Lossett.
Yeah, he kept the Defiant Strike on top of the deck just in the event that Logan didn't tap the Mana Confluence. He would still have lethal coming across.
You saw Joe give a little bit of pump of the fist there, because he knows now he is into the elimination rounds, and his friends behind him watching overhead, Noah Cohen and friends, part of Nerd Rage Gaming. For Joe, it's certainly a big tournament for him. He made the trip out here from California. You and I did not expect to see him here. Logan made the trip over here from Florida, and he can still make top 8 with a win next round. But for Joe Lossett, the trip was certainly worth it. He's in the elimination rounds.
Yeah, great performance for Joe here. And you know, we talk so much about Joe's Legacy accomplishments because of his streaming, the fact that he almost always plays the same deck. He has more standard open wins than he has Legacy open wins. It's 2-1. And now he has an opportunity, perhaps add a 3rd one to the resume. Very impressive stuff.
Congratulations to Joe Lossett on being one of the first players into the elimination rounds